Greetings, wherever you may be watching. Greetings. If you're watching from Facebook or you're watching from YouTube or if you're watching from our page, Cut the Chat, welcome. I'm doing the first time ever interview with Brother Mike here that we have on this show. It's not really a show, it's an impromptu interview to highlight somebody that I think has been speaking a great deal of truth and knowledge to our people in particular for the betterment of us all. So I wanted to have a conversation with him and share it with you all. So Brother Mike, how you doing?
Hey sis, I'm doing well. I'm doing well, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk with you tonight.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. I have a great deal of respect and admiration for those of our people who are out there speaking truth and sharing information for the betterment of our people. I oftentimes get a chance to watch your video and you say a lot of positive things that I think couldn't be said enough. So I'm trying to have a basic conversation, even though I call it an interview. You know, I figure let's kick it. First of all, which I think is more interesting, is how does a brother such as yourself even come into the kind of consciousness that you are walking into? You know, what brought that about in your life where, you know, you started thinking about your people as a whole? That's what I think would be very interesting.
Yes, I would have to say, I'll tell anyone, it's hip hop saved my life, in a conversely, funny way, in the late 80s, early 90s, hip hop had become decidedly, black conscious, black power in its delivery. And, such artists as Rakim Allah and KRS-One and Public Enemy and the Brand Nubians, they helped to bring a missing element, to our development, at least to my generation, particularly those like myself who didn't have a father or even a father figure, so it wasn't the civic association, it wasn't, the pastors and reverends. It was actually hip hop that introduced me and people of my generation to people that we didn't even know had ever existed. People like Malcolm X, who became my spiritual father, and father figure.
I'm so glad that you said that because hip hop is a very, very powerful tool of our people, because, it was their voice that they was hearing. It was the side of the coin to life that wasn't being told to them, but that they felt and that they knew, and it was being these rappers, they were articulating it, the things that they go through, how they felt, and it's so important to be heard. I believe it's especially for the youth because you come up in a society that is oppressing you, despises your presence here, and you don't see a lot of positive images towards you. You don't even hear your voice. Now, having said that, look at what hip hop or rap has been turned into.
Yes.
It's been turned into a destructive tool, to destroy the minds of our youth and in a course where they display and advertise ways and means in which that we could kill ourselves, or disrespect ourselves as women. And I've always wished that, we could take that back, and return it, to its rightful form and return it to its rightful use and intended purpose.
Yes, and we can. We definitely can. Like, first and foremost, hip hop made me want to learn about my history. Hip hop introduced me to Malcolm X, who introduced me to a positive self-conception, introduced me to a knowing that all that's wrong in Black America, almost everything has come about from the result of us being in a system or under a system, that can be called racism, white supremacy, white skin privilege, which has produced, conversely, a Black inferiority and a dependent mindset on the part of Black people, to where we don't believe that we can do for ourselves anything, to help ourselves, and that we're always dependent upon either white people directly or any other racial ethnic group, after that, for our food, clothing, and shelter.
This dependency, how do you view that dependency? Is it a self-imposed dependency, or is it something that was put upon us, as a result of slavery? Because, during slavery, we didn't have the right to think outside the box or to choose
Mm-hmm.
anything for ourselves. In fact, was killed and murdered, for even thinking it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now here we are generations later, trying to revive a people and get them on the mindset of do for self. And sometimes, those of us who are more enlightened or conscious get frustrated with our people because they don't have that mindset to do for self. They can't see us as doing for self. But I wonder how much of that is really a result of slavery, and the chains that was put upon us so that, whatever mind we came here with was totally obliterated,
No doubt.
new mind being replaced that kept us perpetually dependent on, the master, for our sustenance, for our life, for everything. Okay, now
Mm-hmm.
here in America, it seemed like we function underneath another master in the form of government, because we are constantly, continually made to beg and plead for services and programs, to help revive our community, to save our community, always on the begging end. And I don't see nothing wrong with getting, services and programs for the betterment of our community, but I see where I see it's wrong as is that when we solely and wholly depend on that and that alone. Other communities have their own resources and their own culture and their own way of producing and owning and possessing wealth, but not us. We are perpetually made to be on the begging end, looking for sustenance for our existence. And I believe that that is one of the residues, that remain with us as a result of slavery. The question is, how do we come up out of that?
When you read Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery, Booker T. Washington was about 5 or 6, maybe 7 years old when the so-called Emancipation Proclamation happened. And he tells the story from a little boy's perspective of how, the man rode up on a horse and declared that slavery is over. And there was a celebration that erupted, amongst the enslaved population, who dreamed about, becoming free one day. And now this was the day. And now they were celebrating, we're finally free. And he talked about the celebration went on for maybe about a half an hour. And then he said that all of a sudden, there was sort of like a confusion and then a melancholy setting in, and then shortly after that, he talked about how family after family was making their way back up to the big house, to the master's,
Mm.
home, to ask him, what was it for them to do now that they're free? We've been enslaved. All we've known is slavery for hundreds of years. And now you tell us we're free. You took a self-agency away from us. You took a self-determination. You took a knowledge of ourselves, a belief in ourselves, and belief in a God that was for us. You took all of that away from us, reduced us to the status of slaves, of peons. And now you tell us we're free. We don't know how to go for ourselves. So they wound up going back up to the slave master to ask to stay on. And then shortly thereafter, they introduced a system of sharecropping and the black codes and segregation, and all of these other things that was meant to keep us in a state of being slaves. Or the 13th Amendment, which was supposed to outlaw slavery, but left a loophole that said if you are convicted of a crime, you are free except in the fact where you are convicted of a crime. And if you are convicted of a crime, you can be reduced to a status of legal slavery. So there's been so many things that have been done to stop us from healing and regenerating ourselves. Every Black leader, and movement that has erupted in this country organically is seen as a threat.
You said you talked about the damage
Mm-hmm.
that was done to slavery that still, functions among
Mm-hmm.
us, to the extent that even after being proclaimed free, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the withal to how to go forth in pursuit of that freedom. So I'm wondering, how does a Black man or a Black woman, uh, is there a way for a Black man or a Black woman to recognize whether or not they are in their right mind?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know whether you're still walking and operating in the mindset of the oppressor, because that's what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you were brought over here as slaves and stripped of your culture and everything you knew, and a new understanding and information was indoctrinated into you, you yet walk with that same indoctrination and teaching. Because remember, what you knew from your culture and your history was stripped from you. And
Mm-hmm.
everything you now know are the things that the oppressor taught you, indoctrinated into you, and your children and your children's children came up underneath that system.